Hey guys, this is Jamie. So today I want to talk about masculinity, which is obviously my favorite subject because I'm a dude and I absolutely do not judge what's happening in the world right now, but I do judge. But yeah, anyway, I was thinking there was obviously quite a few posts going around which ask like who's your positive male model and specifically like in trans spaces because obviously there's not a lot of trans men representation and how to put this, people sort of, or trans dudes sort of get in their heads like, oh, like, are there positive men, like is it okay to be a man? Because obviously specifically like when I was coming out as a trans dude, there was a lot of backlash sort of about coming out as a man. And I remember when I just came out, I had a lot of friends, mostly online, which stopped talking to me just because I came out as a trans man. And a lot of people also had a lot of things to say to me. And like my mom, who I don't speak with at all right now, like was also really against it. So I really felt a lot of factual hate on the fact that I was coming out as a guy, even though it's still me. I was always myself, and I didn't really change other than coming out and saying who I was. So it was in an era where people sort of were very critical of men and had their reasons, but it wasn't a reason to generalize. And I feel like there was also a reason for that, to have like male positivity pages and in general sort of show that not all men are bad. And I still sometimes end up in discussions where I say, hey, like, yeah, not all men, because we shouldn't be generalizing a whole gender, but people still do. People might have their reasons, valid or not, or can say this sort of and from a place of pain, but you need to understand that you can't just generalize everyone to such an extreme extent. But yeah, so back to the positivity things. And I really got into Ghost of Yote, and not to sort of diminish Atsu's arc because she's amazing, but Jubei really stood out to me, and I'm really trying not to spoil, but he really stood out to me as a male positive model. And it was one of the few characters which kind of like I actually sat down and I started thinking like that dude is probably someone I'd mention like as positive for that aspect, because he has sort of the sort of what do you expect in those male positivity things to have, like sort of family oriented, loyal to his friends, clan, etc. So you kind of have those qualities, and I'd probably put Jube as a reply to that next time. And it also got me thinking that in general, when people ask those things, it's because right now in society, people tries to sort of paint men under this one light, under this one sort of paint of, you know, we can go on and on. Obviously, like, are all men abusers? Are all men default to that? And obviously, that's not the case, and that's not the reason. But I feel like we're diminishing masculinity into this one very simple thing once again, and it is something we shouldn't be doing. And specifically, as if there's this one way to be a man, one way to sort of be masculine. And sort of people see it as the one way is the wrong sort of the abusive or incel um or grifter or insanely bad right winger, and people cling on to that, and then it goes into more pipelines of like looks maxing, grifting, sort of like the TikTok dude which has no interest other than like mewing or whatever. And the problem is people sort of think that that is the one right man, and sort of because they sort of thump their chests and say like, yeah, I'm the real man, I'm the alpha, we start internalizing those things as if that is the right way to be a man, and that is not the only way to be a man. And specifically, we get sold this sort of social media way of like the man should be like, I don't know, steroids, pumping iron, hours a day, dieting, but also just eating raw meat or whatever. I don't know. That is what makes the real man. Everyone else somehow inferior. But and we end up sort of putting that on everyone else. So we end up sort of like as if gay men are not real men, as if trans men are not real men, as if that is the only real man. And we end up sort of, when we talk about men, we just talk about that one guy when it's not the case. And on top of that, it sort of goes into like he needs to have very Eurocentric features also while having an American mentality of grifting and that work is everything and very sort of alt-right ideology. And I have to say that obviously it becomes the sort of bastard child because in Europe we don't really have those values. And yes, we do have right wingers, we have insane traction of the alt right, but we do not have what America has, you know, and specifically like in this day and age. So it's sort of weird to have that packed up and transported to everywhere, and sort of people try to look like that. And the problem is that even if you have positive role models and like someone's dad or like characters like I was mentioning, or like I don't know, singers, I don't know, writers, musicians, you have everyone. But the thing is, we just don't think about them. We just think of them as like, yeah, that dude is cool, like, or that is the dude with makeup and stuff. We don't see it as sort of like the dudes in our heads. Do you know what I mean? And that is the problem. Well, when it comes to women, we sort of, because of the good advocacy, we sort of understood that femininity and woman is a wide spectrum, but we don't have that in men. We do not have the sort of wide spectrum of men. And right now, because the sort of the incel grifter crowd is so loud and we allow them to be loud, we end up thinking as if those are the only ones and everyone else is like a gay man, and like we sort of ends up putting the thing whatever is before the man as the thing as rather than that is a dude. So we need to sort of go back to the idea and the accepting that masculinity is also, you know, like a wide variety of spectrum and everything. So that's pretty much what I wanted to say, and I really hope that we, you know, go back to it, that we go back to understanding that there's no one way to be a man. There's not only one reason to be that. And also like going back like to looks maxing. Like people think that being a man is just like very simple and simplistic things, like having a square jaw, grinding and going to the gym, but it's not that. And like specifically it's weird because we're plastering that everywhere. Like we're plastering that in Brazil, we're plastering that in Portugal, we're plastering that in Eastern Europe, and it's like masculinity was very different everywhere. Like in Brazil, sure, you have like more macho and like dudes like 99% like of them do not know how to dress. I'm sorry, Brazil. And then we have them being open about things and talking. And I do think that there is sort of a more vulnerable man in Brazil than there is, for instance, in Eastern Europe, specifically when it comes to like emotions and talking. And for instance, men in Eastern Europe just don't touch. It's just like handshake. Like a son will not be hugged by his dad. You know, like my dad was considered weird for hugging me as a kid. And you sort of have that. Well, in Brazil, obviously, you have a massive culture of touch, and like everyone will be hugging, kissing cheeks and stuff once meeting. When you don't have that in Eastern Europe, and you will have more candid conversations, Brazilians, and more openness. While in Eastern Europe, people might be valuing intelligence more, or like, you know, like let's discuss arts, let's discuss movies, let's discuss this and that. Or in Brazil, it's just gonna be, you know, cracking a cold one with the boys on the beach, and it's okay, and it's a different sort of sociological answer and sort of how society goes there, and socialization between men, and that's okay. Like in Portugal, you're gonna have something in the middle of that. So yeah. So, but no, we end up sort of plastering, and we end up internalizing that the broccoli haired TikTokers are the man and they're the only right one. And then it ends up with people desiring or wanting that man for themselves, or like to fuck that, or whatever. And we end up giving them more power. So the reason is, don't listen to the broccoli TikToker, and you know think of yourself, look around you, and think maybe the person who you're thinking of positive masculinity can be anyone. Like, I don't know, your favorite singer, if they haven't done anything wrong. And that's it. That's pretty much what I wanted to say. Thank you very much for watching. I know I sort of drifted in the past few weeks by talking more about Portugal and Brazil. And also, we're having floods here in Portugal, in case I guess everyone who's outside of Portugal who's watching it. It's been quite stressful, even though me and my partner are okay. So, yeah. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I appreciate all the likes, all the comments as well. Had an interesting discussion about religion. Thank you very much for watching. If you want to say something, feel free to drop it in the comments. If you want to piss a broccoli hair TikToker, feel free to send this video to a broccoli hair TikToker for like her. Thank you very much for watching. Good night. Thank you.